Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Casual Sports Podcast. I'm Al Caberna. That's Mike Wolfgang. This is the podcast, and there's our banner across the bottom. Mike, for the first time in, 7 months, football is back, baby. The Hall of Fame game. I know it's meaningless, pointless. The two teams kind of suck. It's preseason. But it's something, man. For those of us deprived of football for months, we're finally back to it. Mike, I know it's kind of a meaningless game here, but I think it's kind of this start to the season, start to the fall, start to everything else in the sports world. It's kind of that reset point we get to. Football always feels like the start of a new sports year because of the way they all kind of tick into one another. But we're here, 2022 season. All the off-season stuff, start throwing it out the window. Now it's just time to get back to football.
Well, you know what? The Hall of Fame game is meaningless, but I do look forward to it every year because half the time I don't watch it. I'll watch a little bit and then I drift off and turn something else on, especially when the starters come out at the first few drives. But it's still fun. I had a chance to go to a couple of them too. I was actually at the year. I don't know if you remember the year that got canceled a couple years ago because of the turf. I was there, and everybody was freaking out because there's people from all over the country there. People visit from all over the country, even for this game, it's an exhibition game. So people visit that because it's Hall of Fame weekend. Everybody's there seeing their teams. You see all different jerseys. It's cool if you ever get a chance to go, but it's always fun to see it because, like you said, it starts everything.
Yeah,
it's nationally televised. It's a preseason game that's on national television. It really starts that feel.
Yeah, no, it does. I'm excited to see what happens tonight. Jaguars and Raiders going into it, 8 p.m. game. Raiders right now favored by just 2.5 points. And I think when you look at that 2.5 as the spread going into it, I don't think I like that. I think I like the Raiders by a little bit more going into this one. Money line has them at minus 135, Jaguars plus 115, which means Raiders implied probability about 57.45%. So I would say, considering they're given almost a 60% chance to win this game, I think that spread probably should be a little bit higher than 2.5% or 2.5. I'd probably give this a full 9.5 point spread towards the Raiders if I was looking at this one. I think when you look at the two teams, I mean, I know we're going to be seeing a lot of backups, but the fact that Jacksonville's coming out there and it's going to be Jake Luton the whole time, and we're not going to see Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, starters probably only going to play a couple of rounds here in the first quarter. We'll see how far they go, but we know the Raiders are rocking it with Derek Carr, obviously, and the newly added Devontae Adams, which everyone seems to forget that he's kind of jumped onto this team here. I've seen a lot of people in the offseason talking about like best players on the team, and every time it's Darren Waller on the Raiders, and then immediately after they go, wait a minute, Devontae Adams is on this team. So I think that should be something to watch just for a little bit here if he can get in there. Chandler Jones also joining the Raiders here. Jacksonville got Brandon Scherff, and they paid a ton of money down to Christian Kirk, so we'll see how this situation rolls out. Travis Etienne has been moved back to running back for Jacksonville as well. So I think when you look at these two teams, I think that first quarter as well is where you really got to watch stuff. And this is obviously when you know what you're going to kind of have to work with throughout the season, depending on who plays. But with this Raiders team, I think their starters are a lot better, but I almost want to give depth here to the Jaguars, which does kind of bring that spread back down as you get later into the game because you're going to have backups playing the majority of it. But I think when you look at this Jaguars team, the way they've been rebuilding the last couple of years, I do think it puts them in a good spot during the preseason. I think they're going to look good here. It's obviously been shortened down to just 3 games here in the preseason, so a much shorter span to get those new guys involved. But I think it should be fun to see some of these young guys get those opportunities to play, especially for Jacksonville. I mean, this is a huge chance for those guys to get starting spots on this team because this is a squad that's obviously been among the worst in the NFL the last couple of seasons. So they've got nice draft picks. They should have a lot of fresh young players that are looking to grab spots that should be available. No spot on this Jacksonville team should be locked down going into the season. Maybe Trevor Lawrence, but in my opinion, I mean, if Jake Luton comes out here in the preseason and dominates when he's out there, I wouldn't go so far as to say maybe give him a look because Jacksonville, I know they're waiting to see what Trevor Lawrence does, but they're a rebuilding team, and whoever shows up to play quarterback the best is, in my opinion, who should be that guy. So we'll see. Jake Luton hasn't looked good in the 3 NFL starts that he does have. Jacksonville also has Kyle Slaughter, I believe, as their backup quarterback behind him. Raiders have a little bit better in that position at quarterback. They're going to have Jarrett Stidham and Nick Mullins. So not great, but we're going to be seeing some awkward quarterback play. Probably a lot of running the football. Brandon Bolden, Amir Abdullah, and Zamir White for the Raiders should be getting a bunch of carries here. I do expect Jacksonville, though, to keep it open and throw the ball a lot more, testing out some of their younger guys. We should see Jacksonville running their full offensive and defensive schemes here, trying to get this team ready. Well, I think the Raiders probably, letting off the gas a little bit here in the early stages. They're not going to be going 100%.
Well, first of all, you started off your conversation talking as point spread, so I'll start with that part. I think I agree with you about that part on terms of the 1.5 that's currently at. If I'm making bets tonight, which I do not bet preseason games, shouldn't even bet that at all. But if there's something, I think it's going to be over under tonight. The point total 33.5. You're talking 2 touchdowns and a field goal for each team. I think that's doable. It's not,
especially here in preseason. Defenses are so lackluster. I mean, offenses are too, but offenses are more likely to click here early on.
Yeah, it's not easy. When there's different, second string, third string coming in, you're playing with 3 different string starters, and then some starters, like you said, not all of them. But that's tough. But I think that's doable to happen because we see these preseason games. Like I said, there's more running up the scoreboard, not up high, but it's more chances of offense.
Well, it's not necessarily running up the scoreboard either. It's just putting in new guys and letting them actually put together a drive. So I mean, it's an oversized scrimmage, basically, is what this is. The scoreboard doesn't matter. They're just trying to find plays that work, find players that work together, find those schemes, and put things from practice into game time movement.
And I agree with the part, because I'll kind of focus more on Jacksonville with that topic, because it is more kind of an audition role for them. For most part, for the Raiders, you know what you're going to get week 1. But, yeah, I don't know. With Trevor Lawrence, I think, obviously, like you said, odds are the backup's not going to come out and light things up. It's going to be Trevor Lawrence starting week 1. But you see the weapons they brought in, not overwhelming, but Christian Kirk's a good guy to bring in Christian Lawrence. Evan Ingram's a guy. I forgot they even got Evan Ingram, who I liked with the Giants.
Oh, right, yeah.
And Zay Jones is a good. He had a kind of breakout year last year, and then Darius Williams on the defensive side, and Laquan Treadwell also was a receiver. So they load up on 3 receivers and a tight end to go along with what they already had for Trevor Lawrence. I think this is the year we maybe see, because I know there's topics going around, people asking questions like, what second-year quarterback can have a bounce back year? I think it's going to be a good bounce back for Trevor Lawrence this year, because it wasn't all on him last year, but it was a bad rookie year for him. And I think it's if they continue to build on this, what they got this offseason, try to get something going this year. And I do like Doug Peterson as a head coach. I think that's going to be good for Trevor Lawrence. That should be good for them. But on the Raiders side, there's not too many holes that are going to be open, I don't think, because we saw how pass heavy they were last year with Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow. Now you got them 2 with Devontae Adams and Derek Carr, who I've always defended and said he was an underrated quarterback. They got something going too, but the tough part is, I know we broke down divisions too, but that's a tough part for them to be into, and that division is loaded. But I think they're pretty deep too. I think there's more talent. Obviously, it's different because it's preseason, and you're talking about a rebuilding team versus a team that just made the playoffs last year. But I think it's an interesting roster with the Oakland or Las Vegas Raiders. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I understand we'll make that mistake. Couple fun things going into this game. Josh McDaniels taking his first head coaching job in more than a decade, and the first game he's coaching is at his former high school, Canton McKinley Senior, where actually YSN and myself and Ty Bartell called some Elite 8 and Sweet 16 games this past basketball season down there with Youngstown Cardinal Mooney making their way down there. It was also Campbell Memorial, I believe, the other team that was there at the same time. So I've been there. A lot of people have been down to that Hall of Fame stadium. I think it's kind of cool that his first gig back is going to be in this stadium. Fun little homecoming thing for him to see. It's just a preseason game, but I think the pressure's kind of on McDaniels, coming back home, first time in his coaching career. He's getting to coach, in that stadium, in this town where he grew up. I think pressure's on for him. He's got to win, right? I mean, all his friends and family should be there to see his first game coaching in over a decade. Pressure's on for McDaniels. He's got to win this thing. So That's another reason why I think the Raiders should be favored in this game, because he knows he's got to win.
Hey, and you know what? I know it's a preseason game, but still, you're still out there trying to win. Not you want to win, not like you're trying. I don't want to say you're not trying, but you want to win for us. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
And him being back in a place he's from and in a stadium that's just gotten renovated. The first year I was at the Hall of Fame, it was the old stadium. Then when I went to that game that got canceled, they were still in the process of redoing it. Then I went back the next year and it was all done. So I kind of got to see the whole thing get renovated. Now he's there in a good place that is he's from, and it's nice, really place to play, and they have a lot of events there. So I guess if you're looking for a storyline, that's one. I give you credit for trying to find one. But
I honestly, I was going along like before the show, like, all right, things to watch out for going into the game, and this one was kind of the big one. Going into it, NFL.com put out like 4 storylines, and that was the only good one. The other one they had was Canton becomes Luttonland, which is just okay. Backup quarterback Jake Lutton's getting a good share of reps. All right, I guess we'll see how that goes. CJ Beathard also backup quarterback as well for Jacksonville going into the game. Running backs for them, obviously James Robinson. He's still recovering though from torn Achilles last year. So you're going to see more Travis Etienne, Raquel Armstead, and Snoop Connor should be getting some runs. But the other headline was new faces everywhere, and Devontae Adams, Chandler Jones, Brandon Scherf, Christian Kirk. And the fourth one they put out there was just, finally, football has returned. So they couldn't even find storylines going into this game. So,
well, last year was kind of easy because last year was Cowboys-Steelers. This isn't a real overwhelming matchup. So I guess that's probably
it's not. It's an established AFC West team taking on a rebuilding Jaguars team. So,
and there's no Trevor Lawrence.
Right. And the best player on one team isn't, or the starting quarterback on one team isn't going to be in the game
whatsoever. The best player. Yeah.
Potentially the best player. I think that's open for discussion. I think when you look at this.
No, I mean, he has the potential. I mean,
right. I think that's the storyline. We'll obviously see in a couple of years' time how his career pans out. But I think after that first season, I think he is one of those guys you have to watch out for to make that second jump, especially with the added weapons around him. But 3,600 yards last year was the good side of things. The bad side was 12 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, under 60% completion, just barely by 0.4%, but it was under 60%. So he's definitely below the numbers you want to see. You want to see those touchdowns. They don't even have to go up that much. Make it 15 touchdowns, but you have to cut those interceptions in half. You cut those 17 down to 8 or 9. That's where I think this team wants to see in this year. Reverse that touchdown to interception ratio. You don't want to be going to 1-2. You want at least a 2-1 going into this second year for Trevor Lawrence. So I think that's where his expectation needs to be for this season. The yardage, I think he can stay the same, but it's that accuracy. It's running those route trees with his wide receivers and bringing in Christian Kirk, a guy with some of the best hands in football. That's going to be a big addition to him. He needs guys out there that know how to create their own space and not just getting open through the schemes and the routes. You need to have a wide receiver that can create space on his own. That's what Christian Kirk is doing for this offense here. I'm excited to see if they put him out here, which I don't know if they will here in preseason week 0, basically is what I think this is called. I'm not sure if we'll see Christian Kirk out there in today's game very much for more than maybe one drive. Even that, I might still question, he's a little bit older and he knows what he's doing here in the NFL. Your starting quarterback's not working out there. I'm not sure they're going to put him out there and put him in a position to get injured. Same thing kind of on the other side with the Raiders. I mean, I think they're going to put their guys out for a drive, but I don't see them leaving injury-prone Derek Carr out there, superstar wide receiver Devontae Adams, Darren Waller, Alex Leatherwood, Josh Jacobs, another injury-prone dude. I don't see them leaving this offense out there for more than a drive, if that, especially in such a low-profile game here. Week 0, you can't afford injuries at this point. It's going to completely derail your season. The Raiders, they had enough problems last year. I don't think they're trying to start out with their quarterback injured.
Well, you know what? And I'm glad you brought that part because I was going to bring up the Jacksonville part of it, but I actually forgot what happened with the Raiders. You're having 2 teams last year had a bunch of turmoil. And I don't think that was, on the field stuff, the interceptions, that stuff needs to be cleaned up with Trevor Lawrence. But let's not forget what he went through his rookie year with the Urban Meyer stuff, with the couple stories that came out of Urban Meyer, then losing him, having an interim head coach, now another head coach. So you're about to have 3 head coaches, and you're only starting your second year. But I think the third one's a good one for him, by the way. But yeah, with Christian Kirk, I think, even last year with Lawrence not playing up to his standard, I know it's not uncommon for a rookie to do that, but a guy like Christian Kirk goes there because of Trevor Lawrence. Some of these guys go there because of Trevor Lawrence because they know he has that potential. And on the Raiders side of it too, the year that they had last year, not too many people thought they'd be in the playoffs after the first couple of weeks. Not too many people thought they'd be in this conversation this year to actually do something and maybe even make a run, getting Davante Adams and getting, a head coach that a lot of people have wanted the last couple of years. So I think you're having two teams that had a bunch of different issues last year, and they're kind of coming to this year. It looks, at least, by the eye test, that it could be resolved this year, and they can maybe improve and do something.
I mean, it does look resolved. I think that's a big thing with the Raiders this year. I mean, you're absolutely right. Last year, I think, even I was saying on the show, it kind of looked like the beginning of the end for this Raiders team. They should probably look into selling and making a new fresh start here in Vegas. But they didn't do that. They committed to what they were doing. Derek Carr is the perfect game manager for this team. He's not the best quarterback, but he does his job phenomenally. And he's not going to win flashy awards or make the flashiest of plays. But if you need somebody to take snaps, put the ball in wide receivers' hands, Derek Carr is the perfect guy to do that. And he's been rocking it. Bringing in Davante Adams is a huge addition to this offense, an offense that I think needed some wide receiver help. I mean, you look at their wide out spots this year, outside of Waller, Renfro, and Adams, they don't really have a lot in terms of backup wide receivers. Davante's backups are Mac Hollins, Tyron Johnson, and Isaiah Zuber. On the other side for Renfro, it's Keelan Cole, DeMarcus Robinson, DJ Turner, Dylan Stoner, and Justin Hall. So there isn't a lot behind their starting wide receivers. Injuries this season, I think they've lost a lot in the offseason in terms of depth. I think you got potential if there's injuries and turmoil like there was last year. I don't know if they can do what they did last year because I don't think they have as much on this team. They've lost a lot.
And especially in the division they're in that we talked about. There's really no room for slip-ups this year when you're playing your division teams, 6 times between all three of them? Yep. So that's something else to look at. And I'm trying to look at their schedule just to find something with the Raiders to talk about. They started pretty hard with the Chargers. I know the Cardinals, there's question marks with Kyler Murray, how they started last year, how they fall apart. That's still a tough matchup, but that's your home opener too. At the Titans, that's tough. But, forget they don't have Julio Jones anymore, and they don't have A.J. Brown anymore. So that could be something to look at. Then they have the Broncos, Chiefs. It just seems like it goes a little bit of a break.
That first 5 is a hard test. And if you have any injuries, especially here in the preseason, it's going to derail you in those first 5 games.
Yeah, and then, after you get a bye, and then you play the Texans, then you play the Saints, then these Jaguars again. We'll see what they are at that point. Colts, we'll see what Matt Ryan is with that. There's obviously there's a lot of question marks with these teams because there's a lot of movement.
Right, even with Denver too in that Week 4 matchup, there's a lot of questions there. I mean, the Titans, Derrick Henry's coming back. He was completely healthy, obviously, at the end of last season, but he missed 5-6 games and came back and didn't really perform that great in the playoff game that they ended up losing. And coming back this year, we know running backs have limited lifespans. We've seen great running backs, especially in the last couple of years. I mean, Melvin Gordon, Ezekiel Elliott, Todd Gurley have really great seasons and do a couple of them in a row and then completely drop off. Zeke obviously has been able to stick around a little bit longer than Melvin Gordon and Todd Gurley were with the same team. But I think he falls in that similar category. Even Saquon after his first year with the Giants, great. And then he's completely fallen off due to injuries. And that happens with running backs. And now we see Derrick Henry's first kind of big one. He comes back, doesn't perform. He's up for comeback player of the year this year. And I think that concerns me because if there's any position you don't want as a comeback player of the year, it's running back. Christian McCaffrey has been on this list for 3 or 4 years now in a row. And he continuously gets injured and falls off. And we're not seeing anything out of him anymore. He's great when he's there, and I'm sure Derrick Henry's going to be great when he's there. But I think we're reaching that end point of Derrick Henry. We have to remember running backs only last a handful of years in the NFL. And that's something very important to remember as the season goes down, especially when you're looking at fantasy football coming up here in a couple weeks when those drafts due at the end of preseason, or if you're going before preseason. Be careful with taking Derrick Henry. I think he's obviously a huge hot ceiling on it, but I think he's a potential bust when you talk fantasy football this year because we know running backs have a limited span. So I think when you look at this Raiders schedule, obviously the question marks, can the Chargers continue the way they've been going and continue their upward trajectory? Herbert looks great. The team looks great, but are they going to have it together week one? You hope so. Cardinals, obviously, they have their own set of issues going on out there with the whole contract stuff with Kyler Murray, but I don't think it's going to bother him that much. And they seem to start out good. I think is the big for the Cardinals. They always start out good. It's that getting later into the season, once all that film was on their schemes, I think they've had troubles making adjustments. So we'll see what early on in the year, that Cardinals game should be must-watch TV. I don't know why it's a 4:25 game. That should be either a 1 o'clock or a prime time. 4:25 is a terrible time slot to have that game in. But then you go into the Titans. Broncos got plenty of question marks. Chiefs going into October 10th. I'm interested actually with the Chiefs this year. I don't know what to expect. The wide receiver core is pretty much, depleted. And we saw some struggles because of that last year. Patrick Mahomes just didn't have anybody to go to. Mahomes is still a great quarterback, but, when some of his best wide receivers out there are Byron Pringle, is he going to have enough targets out there, enough speed, enough, weapons to actually make this a successful team? I don't know. I think they're an interesting team to watch. And if I was betting, I don't bet, but if I was, Kansas City is not a team I would be looking at very much this season.
Well, I agree with that. Well, first of all, I'll finish talking about the Raiders schedule because Chargers, Chiefs, and Broncos, you played them twice. Like I said, you got them 2 apiece. Look at the later half, too. They played versus the 49ers at home the second to last week. That's a tough one. At the Steelers, that's always tough to play. You got to host the Patriots. Whatever you want to say about them this year, they're not going to roll
It's
over.
still the Pats.
Yeah. You got to play at the Rams. Then we talked about this upper part of it, too. But there's a lot of tough games for them to get through. And I know there's some breaking points where there's some favorable matchups, but that's a tough schedule.
November should be a good spot for the Raiders to kind of regain some of that energy back. They're going to be on the road against the Jags, back at home against the Colts. When we talked about what Matt Ryan's going to be, we don't know yet. He's getting up there in age. If the Broncos are any good, they will have to go to Denver and then they have to go to Seattle. But those 4 teams all have major question marks going into the season. We don't know what they'll be. That November part of the schedule, I think, is must win for this Raiders team, and they should be able to find 4 wins in there at least. And those are must win games when you look at the difficulty of their schedule elsewhere, because you have to probably go 500 through those tough, difficult games, win those other 4, and see how you come out of that. I think it's a hard challenge to do. So I think 10-7. Right in there, 9-6, probably a good season for the Raiders this year. I think it's going to be a hard task for them to do, though.
I think record-wise,
they got some great weapons.
They do, but I think record-wise, it's probably somewhere around that it was last year. I think they were 9-6, 10-7, like you said. I think that's what they were last year. I think they're probably going to be around that. Not because I don't think they're a good team, it's just because that schedule I ran through in the division they're in. And now that leads to what I was going to say about the Chiefs. I agree with the weapons part of it.
They were 10-7, by the way.
Yeah, I knew it was somewhere around there, but. Now, with the Chiefs part of it, I think I agree they're obviously going to take a step back with Tyreek Hill. That's obvious. But they still have to, I know he's not a number 1 receiver. He's a tight end, but they still have Travis Kelce. And I think that when you add guys like, you have Pringle still. When you bring guys like, I know they brought in somebody else too, but when you bring in somebody else like Juju Smith-Schuster, who's question marks, I'm not saying he's a number 1 because he's not. But I think when you have a guy like Travis Kelce, I think that's a good opening for a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster, because he's not a number 1, but I think he's going to be able to play off that, because you see what Mahomes does with Travis Kelce. They use him like he is a receiver,
right? And most of the time, you have to have both a linebacker and a safety on him. Yeah, because of he has more speed than a linebacker, but he has more power than a safety. So you need the safety to be on it for coverage and at least to slow him down once he makes the catch. And then you need the linebacker there to actually bring him down. So yeah, Kelce's a matchup nightmare. And I definitely agree. I think that opens the door for Juju Smith-Schuster, because we know he's not a great number 1 guy. But if he can play number 2 to Kelce throughout this, I think it'll put him in a better spot. I still don't think he's going to do great like he did behind Antonio Brown.
Yeah, exactly. I
don't think he's putting up those numbers as he was number 2 in Pittsburgh. I think it might be a little better than what he was doing, especially I mean, he had an old Big Ben as quarterback. That wasn't doing him any favors. So I think you're going to see better numbers this year for Juju, but I'm not sold on. If I had to, I'll put this in fantasy football. I'm not sold if I would take him as a top wide receiver in the league.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think he's in that. But talent-wise, if you're talking about fantasy side, if you're talking about just this team, talent-wise, he has the talent. I think we all know that, and I think it's probably, like you said, I think it's a mixture of things why I think he's going to have a better year, bounce back type year, because he's not the focal point of the offense, and I think that's where he's better in. Travis Kelce is right now the focal point because they don't have Tyreek Hill anymore. So I think that part of it too is going to help him. And I think, like you said, playing with an experienced quarterback like Patrick Mahomes is younger. He's playing with an experienced quarterback like Ben, who was older, tail end of his career. He did look good, but Juju made him look better. But I think it's playing with Pat Mahomes, the way he gets open, the way he moves around and gets guys the ball, and they get open for him. I think it's going to help Juju. I think it's going to help the offense, but you're still losing Tyreek Hill. It's still a tough part to lose.
Yeah, it's a tough part to lose, especially after you lose your guy and Sammy Watkins the year prior or year before that. So it continuously, the best positions in this kind of continue to dwindle down. And part of me almost feels like what we're watching here with the Chiefs is what we watched with Seattle 10 years ago after the Legion of Boom, and after they didn't run the football, everything kind of just started crashing down piece by piece. I almost feel like we're seeing that unfolding once again in real time with this Chiefs squad, because it seems like every year, I mean, one of the best guys from their Super Bowl team is going elsewhere, and now they're not liking the fit, or there's a problem here. I feel like it's a dumpster fire that's just got a spark in it at the moment, and it hasn't lit full yet, but I think it's might be coming here soon. And I don't think they're going to be completely garbage, just like we didn't see Seattle fall apart, because at the end of the day, they still had Russell Wilson. They're still going to have Travis Kelce on this team. They're still going to have Mahomes. But I think you're going to see some of that falling apart at the edges, and they're not going to be that AFC Conference Championship favorite anymore.
And, let's talk about some of the things they lost. They lost Tyrann Mathieu on the defensive side, too.
Right. That was part of what I was talking about with piece by piece falling down. Matthew was a huge part of their Super Bowl win.
On their defense.
What they had to get there. And to lose that off of defense, that's a huge loss for this team. That's what made Seattle start falling. Their defensive veterans just kind of went, I'm done here in Seattle, or I'm done playing football in general.
Yeah, and we talked even last year, that's part of the reason why they struggled most of the years, because their defense. And their defense throughout this run hasn't been that great. And he was the reason why they were respectable, because they had Tyrann Mathieu. They don't have too much behind them in that department. So I think that their offense, I think, is going to find. They showed last year, even though they had Tyreek Hill, they showed last year they started out slow. They could find some ways to bounce back, create other things. That's not the case with their defense, because they didn't have many options on their defense. So I think that's more a big loss than Tyrann Mathieu being lost on the defense than what they lost on offense.
Yeah, could be, but let's talk Jacksonville's schedule for the season, because we talked about this being an interesting team, and if we expect Trevor Lawrence to have kind of a jump here in his second season, maybe turn that touchdown interception ratio over, having James Robinson and Travis Etienne as your backfield, hopefully that duo works. Hopefully James Robinson can come back healthy, and we see the same Travis Etienne we did in Clemson, because I'm not going to lie, watching Travis Etienne run the ball, that's fun. Unless it's on my defense like it was at Ohio State a couple times. But seeing the way that guy can perform and slice through the defense, he's a special talent. Urban Meyer was kind of wasting him last season. I mean, he brought him in and then went, you're going to be a wide receiver, and then never played him. It felt almost like Urban Meyer kind of went in here and was getting revenge for Clemson beating Ohio State in the playoffs. Kind of what it felt like a little bit now, especially as we're looking back on it. It's definitely an odd situation. But I think if you expect the Jaguars to take a jump this season, having Christian Kirk there offensively, I think the defense is still going to need some help. They don't really have that many big names. You got Shaq Griffin and Darius Williams there in the backfield, Josh Allen's as a linebacker. But it's a decent defense. Is it going to win them any awards? Is it going to give them any real recognition? No. But I think it could be worse for Jacksonville this season. I think it's going to be not the worst in the league, but I think still below. I'll say bottom third, I think is where they're going to fall, but on the high end of that bottom third. So I think when you look at the season, week 1 on the road against the Washington Commanders, I think that's a phenomenal first game for the Jaguars because we'll see what the Commanders are here in preseason with Carson Wentz. But week 1, I don't know if I expect anything big out of Washington early in the season. They might win it just because by a margin they'll have a better team. Maybe not a huge margin, but I think they have a better defense, and I think that's important, especially with still a young wide receiver and a young team in Jacksonville. Having an experienced defense for Washington probably gives them a win there, but I think it's a game that Jacksonville can win. I think it's one they can at least keep close in. Week 2, they got the Colts. Again, we'll see what Matt Ryan turns this team into, but I'm not sure it's going to matter. I don't think this Colts team has any pieces around Matt Ryan that are really going to help him outside of Jonathan Taylor and the offensive line. You look at the wide receiver corps, it's one of the worst in all of football this season. So is Matt Ryan really going to make a difference? He didn't make a difference with a poor wide receiver corps down in Atlanta. Actually, he had a better wide receiver corps in Atlanta before he was gone, and it didn't really seem to matter there. I don't think there's going to be that much of a change up here in Indianapolis with Matt Ryan as their quarterback. I know he was putting together some decent numbers last year, and that's why Indy jumped on him when it came free agency time. And Marcus Mariota, now the quarterback with the Falcons, Desmond Ridder, the backup. We'll see how that situation works out. But week 2, again, it's a winnable game for Jacksonville. If they got it's their home opener against the Colts, I think they can win it. I think it's very realistic. You can see them start 2-0 to the season. Then they're going to find a loss because they're going up against the Chargers at home on the 25th. You're not winning that game. So I'm giving that one off to the Chargers. Week 4 for them, they're going to have the Eagles on the road in Philadelphia. If the Eagles play to the expectations this season, it should be an easy win for Philly. But we know it's a city prone to letdowns. In the NFL, every time you expect something, the opposite happens. So we'll see. But I think the Eagles favored by a little bit, by a decent bit going into that one, I'm sure, when spreads open up. But then Texans going into week 5, that should be a win. Then they're back at it against the Colts on the road. I'd probably split this season series 1 apiece, so I'd give that one back to the Colts. But then you got the Giants. Should be a win there. We'll see what the Giants are because I don't like them. I don't think they're a good team. I don't like Daniel Jones. I don't like their head coach position. It's hard to find something I like about this team, and I would say Saquon, but the dude's always hurt. I want to see Saquon before. Watching him at Penn State, he was awesome. And we saw him year 1 in the NFL. He was awesome. We haven't seen that for a while. So I think that's a winnable game for Jacksonville. We'll see about Denver, what they end up here with Russ. I think Denver probably takes this game against the Jags. Raiders should take a game against the Jags. Chiefs should take a game against the Jags. Ravens should take a game against the Jags. But then going into December, final 6 games of the season, they got the Lions. That should be a win. Probably drop one here to the Titans, drop it to the Cowboys. They can beat the Jets. I think this Jacksonville team can definitely beat the Jets, even on the road 2 days or 3 days before Christmas. Then they got the Texans and Titans to finish out the season. I think when you look at this schedule realistically, let me count it up here. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, I'm looking at I'm confident to say I could give this team 6 wins and be happy about it. And I think they have potential to hit 8, maybe 9 if they have a really stellar turnaround for Trevor Lawrence. But I think 6 games is a very realistic expectation for this Jaguars this season. If you're looking at an over-under, I don't know what it is for this team, but I would say 6 games probably a good spot to be in.
Well, the thing that sticks out to me looking at the schedule, like you said, there's a possibility they could start out 2-0, but if you're looking at their first 4 games, 3 of them are on the road. I think that's tough for a rebuilding team, a young team that had a bad year last year, has a lot of different pieces coming in. Not to say they can't do anything, but that's a tough start, I think. And when you're talking about at the Chargers, at the Eagles, it's those 3 and 4 games. That's tough. Washington's not a hard place to win in, obviously, because they're not a good team. Right. But we'll see what they do this year with Washington. But there's 2 games I think
Jacksonville's win total, by the way, is at 6.5. So right where I was putting it.
I think I'd take the over on that if it was me, but
I'd put a tiny bet on taking the over.
I'm not confident, but I think it's trending that way for Jacksonville. In all honesty, and the two games I think that are interesting, they have a lot of big games against big opponents that, like you said, you ran through it. They'll probably lose most of them, but at the Lions, I think that's a good game. I don't think the Lions are going to be good this year, but I think they're, we saw them for most parts of the year last year. They at least challenged people. They didn't really have a good free agency, but I think they can at least be competitive like they were last year. And I think the Jets will probably be the Jets too, but I also like what the Jets did in drafting and free agency. Again, a lot of different faces. It's not easy to put together in 1 year. But I think those are two under the radar, for at least for Jacksonville on the schedule, that are interesting games that they could win both of them.
Well, Mike, by the way, also Jacksonville only favored in 2 games going into the season. Week 5's matchup against the Texans, and then where to go? Week 7's matchup against the Giants. However, they're only underdogs by more than a touchdown in 2 games. Week 3 against the Chargers, in Week 10 at the Chiefs. So they're not favored, but they're not being expected to get blown out. And coming off a season where you were 3-14 and you were worse in the AFC South, you missed the playoffs. I think that's a pretty good look right now for Jacksonville to say, hey, yeah, maybe we're not favored, but we're not getting favored to get blown out either. So I think, as you're saying, it's a trend in the right direction.
Yeah, I think there's a handful of teams that you can say that about this year that are, or at least is this, at least my personal expectations, I think could be trending in the right direction this year. I think the Jets, I think it's going to be another down year, but I think they can maybe take strides because they haven't been good. You can't get much worse. Same thing for the Lions. But I think, for Jacksonville, like I said, they're only favored in 2 games. But, I think that's, if you're a Jacksonville fan, I think that's pretty good that although they're only favored in 2 games, they're not it's not like terrible odds against them in their other games. They're at least being somewhat respected as opposed to last year. I think it's at least something to be excited about if you're not just talking about the product. For now, yeah.
For now, because the big thing is Trevor Lawrence. What is he going to be this season? Everything is riding on Trevor Lawrence taking a jump here in year 2. If he doesn't, this is going to be a 3-win team. This is why this is not a bet anybody should be taking at 6.5 as their.
I'm not saying that
win total. Nobody should take this because if Trevor Lawrence doesn't show up, they're not winning football games. They don't have a true backup quarterback here. They don't have an experienced veteran that can lead them. I mean, who are they going to turn to? CJ Beathard? No way. No way they're going to turn to him if they need veteran leadership at the quarterback position. Jacksonville, they're trending upwards only if Trevor Lawrence actually takes that step here in year 2. So, Mike, 40 minutes into the show, we've been talking for this for a while. Let's go ahead and make predictions for the Hall of Fame game. Our first predictions in a while here to actually pick a game. We've picked, standings and MVP awards and all that type of stuff. But Hall of Fame game tonight, 8 o'clock. Raiders, Jags. We talked both sides a lot here. Who you got?
It's kind of hard because it's a preseason game, but
right.
You know what? I don't give me Jacksonville. Why not? I know they're having a starting quarterback, but whatever. It's a preseason game. I'm just gonna pick an upset here. I don't think it's likely they win though. I'm say that.
Giving them the bell. It's preseason, no bells.
That's preseason. Preseason needs its own training camp too. It's not out for preseason, but for the bell, I mean. But I don't think Jacksonville's gonna win. It doesn't matter, obviously, but I don't think they're going to win just because of the fact that they don't have a lot of the starters in. I think the Raiders at least play their starters for 1, maybe 2 series. There's possibility I think they can get a touchdown out of that, which probably is going to be the difference. So I'd probably say the Raiders, but I'm just going to pick Jacksonville for the heck of it.
I think I'm kind of with you in the same respect, and I think maybe the big thing I look at this game, and I've talked about it, I like the depth of Jacksonville. They've had a lot of picks recently, and they've used them well, and they've put together a deep team that's not great, but it feels very kind of average all the way through. They have a couple, up points as their starters, but I don't think the fall off to second and third strings is as big, especially not when you go over to the Raiders and you look, okay, Devontae Adams, who's behind him? I mean, if I'll put this in, Madden ratings perspective, you got Devontae Adams as the 99 overall, then you're going to have their backup wide receiver. You'd be lucky to see him probably in there as a 73. So the fall off, I think, for the Raiders is going to be a lot bigger once those starters come out than it will be for Jacksonville. So I want to go with you here with Jacksonville, but I'm going to give benefit of the doubt here to the Raiders. I do think that having that starting unit, if they put them in their 2 drives, that'll be 2 touchdowns, I think, for them. So I think Raiders can take this. And as I said, McDaniels has to get a win back at his own high school. It's got to happen.
Well, and in Jacksonville's defense too, you're gonna have to, like, you even broke down there. The Raiders receiving court depth, it's not deep. It's top heavy, but it's not balanced. I'm not saying Jacksonville's is either, but I think they have a lot of guys that are, young guys that are in preseason games that this is their type of environment. They want to go out there and show what they have. You're going to have guys that are going to try to go out and prove it. Not to say they're going to go out and score a bunch of stuff or whatever. Even the backing quarterbacks, back to defensive guys too. But maybe that could work to their benefit if, they have a bunch of young guys that are hungry when opposed to the Raiders where they're just going to play their older guys, a couple drives, and then just kind of filter in the rest of the game. So I don't think Jacksonville's going to win, but why not pick them? It's preseason.
Right. All right. Well, let's take it in here. We've been talking about wild card and dark horses in this already. So how about we make some picks here for the season? Since today's the official start, we're going football. I think pretty much this whole show is what it sounds like. Yeah, so I might as well keep it that way. Super Bowl favorites right now for you. Who do you got?
I guess I'll start on the NFC because we have the defending champ on that side. Obviously, you have the Rams still back in it. I think you're like we talk about every year. Defending champs, they got to be still in conversation next year. Definitely the Rams.
So give me your two teams in it, and then make your pick for champ.
Oh, in the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you wanted like favorites from each. Okay, I guess I'll go. I'll stick with the Rams because of what I just said. On the AFC side, it's tough because it's so loaded.
Yeah.
Let me think of all the contenders. Give me a second. Who was in it? Oh, the Bengals were in it last year. I don't know. I guess I'll go. Let's throw the Ravens in there. Why not?
The Ravens. All right. I don't hate that pick, and I kind of like the way the Ravens could go this season, especially if they all come back healthy, because we know what to expect if this team's healthy. They have great guys going all around, and they've really done a great job, I think, building around Lamar Jackson. I think last year they kind of showed that even as half a team, they're still a really good team. I mean, they were 8-9 with a third of a roster. And a fifth of their starters. They had the most guys on the injured reserve all last season, and I think the most in NFL history for one season. So they got absolutely peppered, and they still finished 8-9. And they were looking like a good team. I think, when that team's healthy, that's definitely one you have to watch out for. But I'm gonna make Matt happy here with my AFC side. I got the Bills.
I just thought of that too. I was like, damn, I forgot about the Bills.
Oh man, it feels like they're trending in the right direction. And if it's not now, I don't think it's going to happen with this current team. I think it could happen still under Josh Allen, but I think if they don't find a way to get it with this roster, it's going to be kind of a tear down, make some trades type of season next year and try and retool everything. I don't think it'll be a bad season after that, but I think right now is kind of their time to shine with Kansas on the way down, Titans potentially on the way down. I think they're the favorite right now coming out of the AFC. I think when you look across and all the teams, there's a lot of our big names finally taking that step down off the pedestal. And I think it opens the door up for them. Over in the NFC, I hate the NFC.
Me too.
Because Aaron Rodgers, we know, isn't getting past the NFC Championship game. He never does. So you cannot count on it.
Well, I wouldn't say never. He has, but just not in the last 10 years.
Right, not in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And back MVP seasons, if he was going to do it, he was going to do it in one of those, and he didn't. And the squad this year isn't going to get it done for him. I think when you look at it, odds-on favorite is Tampa.
Do you think?
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about Tampa this year. I'm not doubting them. I just don't know. I don't feel the same way as I did the
Tom
last
Brady.
2 years.
And I mean, here's the thing. I always say it. When you got Tom Brady on your team, it's like having LeBron James in the NBA. You're going to be in that conversation for the finals or the Super Bowl. You're going to be in that conversation all year long because you have a player of that caliber who has done it before, most all time in the NFL. I don't think that's who I'm going to pick. Who I really want to pick is Dallas. I want to pick Dallas for you.
Are you serious?
I want to, but they're such a freaking disappointment, and they freaking choke every single year.
I know.
As a sports fan, I can't pick Dallas to win because I know they're not getting out of the first round.
Alec, you saw last year we did picks week by week. Although I picked them in every game because they're my team, I'm not confident 80% of the games I play because they're the Dallas Cowboys.
I picked them to lose in that first round of the playoffs, and I was right. I'm like, you can't trust them to win. It doesn't matter how much they're favored by. They're not going to win. And that's the thing coming into this season. It's like, I want to pick them. I really want to pick them. And, screw it. I made Matt happy with the AFC. I'll go Mike here with the NFC.
Don't do it.
I'm going to hate myself at the end of the year for it, but I'll take the Cowboys against the Bills.
Oh, God. Now there's pressure on them. That's when they suck the most, when there's pressure on them, Alec.
Yeah, there's pressure on them because Alec Cabrera, the Casual Sports Podcast, at 46 minutes into an August 4th show during the preseason, said that they're going to be in the Super Bowl.
Well, there is. We all three of us put pressure on each other. We all argue about our teams. It's fun.
Yeah, it's pressure on them because you know what? I hope Dak Prescott and Zeke Elliott are watching this podcast. If you do, boys, stop choking. Put in the yards. Put in the work. Stop talking.
Yeah, tell your boy Zeke. Tell him. Give it to him.
I want Zeke to get back to that high level. I think he's probably at the end of his tenure as a running back in the NFL, getting there to his starter days. And I mean, with what we saw out of Pollard last year, I mean, how can you not put Pollard in as your potential number one guy? His ability to get out on big runs, I think, kind of separates him a little bit more from Zeke at this point in Zeke's career.
Yeah, I think Zeke's become more of a power type of guy.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when you're looking at us,
I think
second and short, third and short, even short fourth down conversions, I want Zeke in there over Pollard every time. That dude's ability to use his legs and keep him churning. I mean, it rivals Alvin Kamara with the Saints. He's
just not that chunk play 20-30 yards type of running back like he was in college.
Slowed down as he's getting older.
And that's fine.
That's what the young 20-year-old running backs do. Now, once you get up there 24, 25, that's when you get to slow down, be that power back.
You talked about it. You talked about it a few minutes ago about we all know that running backs don't last that long. There was an article yesterday about Zeke. He didn't really give a timetable, but somebody asked him a question about how much longer he thinks he's going to play. So it's already at that point of his career where it's how much longer you got, how much longer you want to give. He even talked about his preseason games. He's like, you know what? I've been in the league 7 years. I'm running back. I don't really need to be getting reps in the preseason. Not like he's not like he's being cocky, but it's just that part of it, the position he plays.
Right. He's like, I know what to expect in the regular season. I don't really, need to get that feel out process or get my legs under me. I've done this 7 times already. I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
But Mike, with your Super Bowl fames, you got Rams versus the Ravens. Who do you pick to win that?
Well, here's the reason why I'm picking the Ravens. I actually forgot about the Bills, but I'll stick with the Ravens just for the heck of it because none of us are going to be right on these predictions. You just pick Cowboys. You're not going to be right either. But I hope I'm wrong. But I think with the Ravens,
I know. I'm just like, man, your own team, and you're giving up already. No,
I'm a realist with my teams. I know they're not that. I know they're average. You guys hear me say it all the time. But I think with the Ravens, all the injuries had to even start the year last year. They didn't even start the year healthy last year. We had all this injuries, especially the running backs, to start the year. And I think, for a third of the season last year, Alec, people forget they're hanging around too. Then Lamar Jackson gets hurt and all falls apart. But getting Jackson back, I know it's going to be, we'll see how he plays this year because that contract stuff, his mindset coming in. But getting all your running backs back, getting, through the draft, they had a decent draft. Get even some receivers that they didn't have that were banged up a little bit. I think they were, like last year was just a down year, especially injury-wise. But like getting all these guys back, I think it's a trend that, something that it can only get better from here because they had it. For, like I said, parts of the year last year, they were playing okay. So it's only going to help them is getting these guys back. And I think it's a tough division that they're in. You have Super Bowl, team that was in the Super Bowl last year with the Bengals. I don't know what the Browns are going to be. I don't know what the Steelers are going to be, even though the Steelers always find a way to hang around. So you got to keep them in the conversation. It's a tough division to play in. AFC is a lot more tough than the NFC. We both just said that.
Yeah.
But I think it's why not the Ravens because they've been knocking on the door.
I'm going to take the AFC team in my matchup as well. I got Bills over the Cowboys. I think if you see the Cowboys get it this far, they're going to choke it in the championship. You just know if they get there, it's going to be all the talks on them, all the pressure. Then they fall down. And both of these teams, freaking choke artists, Bills versus Cowboys.
Hey, you know what? I want the Cowboys to win it, but if they even got in it this year, I'd be happy because I've never seen them in a Super Bowl in my life.
Yeah.
Fair
point.
If they lose to a team like Buffalo, that's fine because it's payback from the 90s when Dallas beat them twice.
Fair enough.
So, and I like Buffalo, so I wouldn't be shocked. All
right. So we gave our Super Bowl favorites here. You kind of made the Ravens as a dark horse pick type deal.
They're in that category, yeah.
Right, but I'm going to open this actually to dark horse Super Bowl teams now. Don't have to give me a matchup. Just give me a team that you think maybe middle of the pack, bottom tier, that's in that conversation going into this season as a potential dark horse Super Bowl team.
You know what? Since I'm looking out of here, I'm obviously not going to say Buffalo's a dark horse because they're not. Because I didn't pick them. But I think in the AFC, it's not Tennessee this year because they lost some pieces. You know what? Let me go Miami. Dark horse.
I like that pick. I was kind of leaning that way, but I know they were in the playoffs last year, but I'm going to go with the Raiders. I think with the addition of Devontae Adams, they're not a Super Bowl favorite by any stretch of the imagination, but I think they're definitely a team here out of the AFC that can make that noise. And we know he's such a great game manager. If he gets in the right situation, they can find a way to win games if they stay healthy. That's always been the Raiders' problem. It doesn't seem like they can ever stay healthy for a full season to actually finish it. But I like your Miami pick here. I'm going to go over onto the NFC side, and I think this one's really hard to make over on the NFC because there's a lot of rebuilding teams, and I think a lot of people would go Denver as your quick jump. Well, actually, that's AFC. Never mind. But I think over on this NFC side, Philly's in that mix. I'm interested on San Francisco. The Jimmy G era officially over. They've moved on to Trey Lance now. Officially, that's what they've put out there. So
trying to move him, yeah.
Right. I think you could see what Trey Lance is. I'm interested on it, but out of the NFC, I think I'm gonna.
Not many options.
No, there really isn't. I'm gonna hate myself for doing this one. How about Carolina? I don't like them. Actually, I'm gonna change this down. I got wild card picks as well, dark horse wild card picks. I'm gonna put Carolina in that dark horse as a wild card team this year. I don't think they're going to blow anybody away by any stretch of the imagination, but I think they're a good wild card potential team this year. Hey man, if McCaffrey stays healthy, pair him with Baker. We know Baker can not win games, but he keeps you in them. And when you got a good running back next to him and a better offensive system than what Stefanski had, I could see them potentially making some noise. I don't think they have a bad team all in all, but I'm actually going to go Philly as my dark horse Super Bowl team out of the NFC.
I don't think you're wrong in saying Carolina can maybe contend for a playoff spot. I don't think you're wrong in saying that. Their schedule's not easy, but it's not hard. It's more hard at the beginning, but if they finally get through that, I wouldn't put that out. But I think in the NFC, yeah, my AFC, I'm going with Miami. I think I'm going to go with them. And I don't think you're wrong in saying just because a team like the Raiders in the playoffs last year doesn't mean they can't be a dark horse. Because I don't view them as a contender in AFC, at least not now. So I think to start the year, yeah, they're a dark horse type of team. I like your pick with there, but I'm going to go Miami in the AFC. It's a toss-up with it. I'm kind of torn. I was going to go say Dallas because they're my team, but just for entertainment purposes, actually, yeah, I'll go Dallas. I don't want to say I was between them and Tampa because I don't think Tampa's the favorite this year. So maybe, but is Tom Brady a dark horse? No,
never.
So I guess like I said, I'm not just picking them for my team, but there's not many options in the NFC.
There isn't. I think the Cowboys are a good pick, but I already picked them as my Super Bowl favorite. So
I couldn't even see. I could make an argument for somebody picking New Orleans too. I think they're going to bounce back here.
I kept looking down there at New Orleans, like right under Philly. They got a good roster getting put together.
Yeah.
I think they got some good defensive players too. Everyone looks at that offense, but Slant God's back. You got Chris Olave now on that team. Jameis Winston, I really like him at the quarterback spot. I like it. So my wild card potential, my dark horse wild card teams, I got to throw my own in there. I got the Browns, but then I also got the Panthers. So those are going to be my two dark horse wild card teams.
Dark horse wild card, NFC.
Again, I think when you kind of look a little farther down the list, who's taking that jump this year? Who can make some noise?
Dark horse wild card. I guess I'll go. Man, this is hard in the NFC. It was hard picking a dark horse team. Now we're talking dark horse wild card. I guess I'll go.
You could throw New Orleans, I think, in this conversation.
I was thinking about it, but I think they're in the same category as the Cowboys. I guess I'll go Minnesota.
The Vikes, all right.
I guess. I don't really have a reasoning for it. There's no options. AFC. Okay.
Denver.
Possibly Denver. Give me the Jets.
Oh,
I just hyped them up a little bit. Alec, let's have fun with it. I'm not going to be easy and pick Denver because Denver's kind of easy, I think.
That's definitely an easy pick, but the Jets.
I'm going to be wrong. I know I'm going to be wrong.
With the MILF hunter, Zach Wilson. So he's been nicknamed now.
Hey, maybe some female lights it up for him this year. I don't know. Maybe he gets
who knows?
Lucky.
We'll see. I mean, I like the way they've been drafting. I can definitely see them maybe getting over 4 wins, but the biggest problem for me, they're playing the AFC, and we just talked how stacked this AFC really is. Even the bad teams from last year, like Denver, they just brought in a MVP level quarterback. They were a 7-10 team last year. Baltimore, they got an MVP quarterback. Cleveland, the Chargers, I mean, they're a really great team, and they're a 9-8 team. They're just over 500. I don't think I can put the Jets anywhere near even like Miami or Indy. They just don't have the pieces yet. And those are the bad teams out of the AFC.
But we're talking
the NFC. If they were in the NFC, Jets, 100%, I could see them as a potential wild card spot. But I think you just look at this AFC, and it's so loaded all the way through, like we've been saying.
But we're talking like dark horse wild card teams, like fighting for playoff spot, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. You could even probably throw the Colts in there too. I'm trying to look at every team here. I'm not going to say I didn't say Chiefs for anything because I think I picked them to win the division again this year. So I'm not going to do that with them. But
right,
I guess you could probably throw the Colts in there. That wouldn't have been a bad.
That probably would have been a better this season.
That would have been a better pick than the Jets, I think. But
and you picked the Jets. We're sticking with it. We'll see how that turns out at the end of the season. It's going to be wrong. I can't wait. I got these all written down. I'm going to have them
let's see what Matt picks now. Matt might be way worse.
Yeah, we'll have to get his picks on the show tomorrow if he's on. But that is all we have time for here today. I can't wait to see these picks at the end of the season look completely wrong. So what I was looking at with our baseball picks we made at the beginning of the year, and I got Texas Rangers as the one team up there. I'm like, yeah, well, not terrible, but it could have been better.
Hey, it's better than mine. I picked the Brewers, and they're their first place team. So that wasn't really out.
You guys went dark horse, and you went, I'm going to pick a team that won the division last year.
I meant dark horse World Series contender.
Yeah.
Yours was a little bit riskier, but
we took some different differentiating styles on how we wanted to talk about that. But
yeah,
we're actually out of time. Power Hour coming up next on your sports network. I'm Alec Burner. That's Mike Wolfgang. This is the Casual Sports Podcast. We'll see you tomorrow.